Good afternoon. Welcome to the first meeting of the Early Childhood Subcommittee of the House Ways and Means Committee. Today is Wednesday, February 12th. Glad that we can get organized and have our first meeting of the session. We have a pretty light agenda for today, just two bills, House Bill 415 and House Bill 282. We're going to start with House Bill 415. Which is a bill that I'm sponsoring. And I'll say, colleagues, we're not going to be voting on this bill today. This is just a work session for this piece of legislation. If you recall from the bill hearing, bill would create a pilot program for family literacy that would be run by the Maryland State Library Agency in 4 of our state prisons to encourage inmates who are parents record themselves reading a children's book and have that recording and book sent to their child. We do have our state librarian, Morgan Miller, on the call today to answer questions. Alistair, anything else I should say up at the top here before we start discussion?
I think you covered it.
Great. Would love to get feedback on this bill. And again, if there's questions, I'll note. And as I said in the hearing, we are still kind of working out some of the administrative pieces. And actually, I'll ask Ms. Miller about that in a moment, but I'll recognize Delegate Roberson first.
Oh, Madam Chair, you can go ahead if you want to do that first.
No, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
No, just as far as discussion, just for discussion's sake, I met yesterday actually with the Prince George's County Library System, and they are also supportive of this piece of legislation as well. So just adding to the discussion that we are supportive. Thank you.
Great. Glad to hear that. So maybe Ms. Miller, I'll ask you to weigh in. I know that you've been talking with since there are 2 other state agencies involved with this legislation, since the prison libraries are run by the Department of Labor, and then of course the Department of Public Safety and Corrections is the other key player in this. I don't know if there's any update you can provide us at this point.
Sure. Thank you, Delegate Polakovich-Carr. And thank you, Delegate Robertson, for passing on the Prince George's County Public Library System interest. I had an opportunity to meet with some of them yesterday at Library Legislative Day. And I'll just add that library systems throughout the state have been reaching out to us because they really want to be able to do this in their counties. So as I said, when you received the fiscal note, I think there were a lot of redundancies in there between what our agency as the lead would be able to take on and what DPS has identified as their costs. So I've reached out to have some conversation with them. What we really need from DPS in order to do this is access to the prisons, as well as just making sure that the pilot is delivered with all of the right sorts of protocols that we as librarians don't necessarily know in working in state prisons. I have a call today also with June Brittingham, who oversees all of the prison librarians in the state, who we'd also be very closely working with around this. And she and the prison librarians have given their full support. So a lot of the resources that we need and that are outlined in the fiscal note are already in place within the prisons themselves or within the county public library systems and some of our partners. For instance, the Maryland Book Bank has already signed on to provide as many books as we need. So there's one cost we don't need to bring anything to. And between the county public library systems and the prison librarians, when it comes to other equipment and other administrative costs, we really have all of those covered. So as soon as I have more details from DPS and just again, articulating, we need them to give us access and support for following their protocols. We can provide more detail around that. But at this point, as I said in my testimony, I'm confident that we can, as the state library agency, administer and fund the pilot without any additional cost to the state in doing so.
Thank you for that update. Colleagues, any other questions? And I do note that we have some other stakeholders who have joined our call. And just as a reminder, or for anyone who this is their first time joining our subcommittee, we always appreciate folks being on here. If there are ever questions that you feel like you have an answer to, you're welcome to raise your virtual hand and I'll acknowledge you. But otherwise, you're just kind of here in listening mode. So colleagues, any other questions? Yes, Delegate Miracle North.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Regarding, I guess this question is for the previous speaker, regarding your conversations with DPSCS, have they been, because I was kind of struck by the fact that you're still waiting on the access portion. How are things going in terms of, creating that working relationship that this bill will eventually create if passed? Do you find that there's going to be like difficulty in talking with them, or it's just a matter of just the timing of everything as to why there's been a delay on the access conversation?
Sure. Thank you, Delegate. I think it's the timing of everything. I know they're supportive of this. I think that in putting it together quickly to introduce it as legislation, they identified what they thought it would cost to do the program, from books to equipment. We identified what we thought it would cost, and based on costs we already know we have paid for. And I think it's all those numbers coming together. I think they're going to be really happy when I tell them that they don't need to pay anything. We just need their help in getting access, because I do know it is something that they're supportive of. So we're setting up those conversations and have kind of kicked it off already. And I'm happy to come back and provide an update for the committee after we've had the initial one.
Great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you, Delegate Mercury North. Any other questions or conversation on this bill? Okay, seeing none, I'll just say we will bring the bill back once we have these other details worked out. But in the meantime, colleagues, if anything else comes up, just let us know, or please reach out to Ms. Miller. She is a wealth of information. Okay, so moving to our next bill and last bill on our agenda, it's HB 282. This is the legislation sponsored by Delegate Mangione. Alistair, do you want to just provide a brief synopsis of what the bill is?
Sure. So this bill requires that a public elementary, middle, or secondary school may not contain books that are sexually explicit materials, which is defined in the bill as those that contain graphic or obscene depictions of sexual activity. I could talk more if you'd like, but that's the main thrust of it.
And we, correct me if I'm wrong, we voted this bill down. It was voted unfavorably last year in committee, and I believe it was also offered as a floor amendment on a separate piece of legislation, and it was also rejected by the full House. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Is there a motion on this bill?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Delegate Ebersol.
I'd like to move unfavorable on the bill.
Is there a second?
Second, Madam Chair.
Okay, moved by Delegate Ebersol, seconded by Delegate Young. Is there discussion? Yes, Delegate Long.
Yes, I'd like to move favorable.
Well, we already have a motion pending,
Okay.
Delegate Long, so
Fine,
that would
thank you.
need to be voted on. If for some reason that motion is not successful, we could take another motion.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the unfavorable, please say aye or raise your hand. Anyone opposed to the unfavorable? Delegate Long is opposed, so the unfavorable carries, and that will be reported up to the full committee. Colleagues, that is it for our agenda for today. I'll note in terms of when we might be meeting in the future is still a little bit up in the air. I think some of the other subcommittees within Ways and Means are also kind of settling on what our standing times might be. So I'll be in touch, with as much notice as I can if regarding the meeting for next week, if there's going to be one. So thank you all. We are adjourned today.
Thank you, Madam Chair.